Hi everyone, welcome to another video, and in this video I'm going to be showing how I make my curved lamination vacuum formers. So I've got dozens of these vacuum formers. They're all around my shop, wherever I can hide them when I'm not using them. Some I've used dozens of times, some I've used once, mainly for commission work. But I don't throw them out, just in case I can use them again for something else. I'll point out a few points or highlights of this jig, and then of course we'll go into the process of making one. So this jig is pretty much made up out of particle board. The reason I use particle board is because of its weight. I mean, of course you can make this out of MDF, and if you've got deep pockets where you can make it out of marine ply. But I like using particle board because it's the lightest of the three, and of course it's by far the cheapest, so that's pretty good as well. You'll see that it's got ribs, so if I turn this around here, you'll see a bunch of ribs along there. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 ribs. So there's 12 ribs running long ways along here, and in between those ribs are packers. This will all become apparent during the video. That's fitted to a base, and then I skin it with bendy ply, and that bendy ply itself is skinned again in packing tape, because I use PVA and epoxy and neither of them will stick to packing tape. So you can be safe in knowing that whatever you press on here in your vacuum press isn't going to stick to the actual former, which would be pretty bad. So all of the edges on the base, the top and bottom, have been rounded. The reason I do this is two reasons. The main reason is to protect the vacuum bag, because any sharp objects on here that can puncture the vacuum bag, especially with mine, because I'm running at such a high vacuum. And also the underside being round, that helps slide it into the vacuum press. So if you had any sharp edges in there, it could get caught on the plastic sheet that I've got on the inside my vacuum press, but the rounded edges prevent that from happening. So this is the underside of my former, and you can see where the 12 ribs are, because there's the screws that are holding the ribs in place. And as I said before, in between each rib I've got a couple of packers, and they're spread it out, because if you make this out of solid particle board, it's going to be heavy. I mean, this is actually quite heavy as it is. So any information, which there's not much on this one, I write on the side. So this is a radius of 600 millimeters, and I also put a center line on both sides, because if you're making a curved piece that's pretty much the same length as this, it helps you centering it in the vacuum press. So let's go into the process of making one. So the first thing I've got to do is make up a master template. So for this one, it's 600 millimeter radius. So I've got a radius routing jig, which I've got a router permanently mounted to. I'll set that to 600 millimeters, and then I'll route out this shape here. So first up I'm going to route, I won't route fully through the particle board. I only go about 1/3 of the way through. I'll cut the remainder off on the bandsaw. So then I'll take it over to my spindle moulder with a flush trimmer, and I'll remove the excess waste. Now this obviously can be done on a router table with a flush trimmer, which is what I used to do before I purchased my spindle moulder. So the first thing I'm going to do is, using the router, I'll cut out the 600 millimeter radius. So now that I've done the routing, 1/3 of the distance through the particle board, I'm going to take it over to the panel saw. I'll cut off the blank, and then I'm going to take it to my little bandsaw and cut off the waste. So now that I've cut off the waste with the bandsaw, I'll take it to the spindle moulder and clean it up with a flush trimmer head. Of course, this could be done with a flush trim bit on a router table. So now that I know the dimensions of the template, I'm going to cut out a bunch of blanks on the panel saw, and then we'll come over and mark them out with a pencil against the master template. My ribs marked out with a pencil, so now it's a case of going over to the little bandsaw again and cutting out the waste, and I usually do this about 4 or 5 millimeters on the outside of the pencil line. So I've rough cut out all my ribs. What I do now is I mount 2 of them to my master template. I just screw these on in place with wood screws, and then we'll take it over to the spindle moulder again and flush trim them using the flush trim head. Again, of course, this can be done on your router table. ribs all made, all 12 of them, and I've made up a bunch of packers which were just made from the offcuts of the sheet particle board. Now it's time to mount the edges. So what I'll do here is I mount one edge on the long side and one edge on the short side, so that, because I know that this is square, because one thing that's vital here is that all your ribs are mounted square or parallel to each other. So because the ribs are exact copies of each other, done on my spindle moulder, I know that if I sit them flush up against here and the ends flush up against this side here, then I'm guaranteed to have them all parallel when I join them all together. So that's what I'm going to do now, is put on the two side edges that we're on at the moment. So now I'm going to mount the spacers to the ribs. So the spacers are just two pieces of particle board, and they're going to be glued and nailed in place, and I'm going to do that to each of the ribs bar one, because I only need obviously one less lot of spacers than I do actual ribs. So that's what I'm going to do now. So now that I've got the spacers fitted to the ribs, it's time now to mount them to the base. So they're going to be glued first and clamped in place, and then once I know that they're actually set and locked in place, then I'll flip it over and I'll fit screws into the bottom, through the base and into the bottoms of the ribs to hold them in place. So now that the ribs are fit in place, I'm going to fit the two remaining edges, And that then will complete the bottom of the base. So now I'll flip the jig over and I'll permanently mount the ribs to the base with the screws going through pre-drilled holes, and they've also been countersunk as well. So we're nearly there, so it's time to skin the former now, which I'm going to use bendy ply. And before I actually fit the bendy ply to the former, I'm going to skin it in packing tape. Because as I said earlier on, nothing will stick to the packing tape. So now it's time to finally fit the skin to the former, and then I'll go into the vacuum press. So the way I do this is I put glue on all the ribs. I don't bother about putting glue onto the actual skin itself. And then to hold it in place, I actually put a few nails in with my nail gun on either side, and then it goes into the vacuum press for about 8 hours to really glue the skin to the ribs, and then that's our completed vacuum former. So there you go. It's a pretty lengthy process, but when you've made a few dozen of these, they get quite fast in the end, and they really only take probably a few hours to actually make. So hopefully, you know, like all my videos, you got something out of this, and again, we'll see you next time.